Hello, and welcome to another Wheel of Time diary. A very tired one this week. I've just been sleeping rather poorly the last couple days and did not sleep a lot over the weekend because I was just being irresponsible, we'll say. This week, I did not get as much of the book read as I would have otherwise liked to, only a little over 3 hours, so I only read chapters 23 through 28. So not a whole lot to cover this week. Fortunately, even though I did not get very much done this week, I am still basically on track. I allotted 2 months to read this book. It's been a little under a month, right around a month or so, that I've been reading The Fires of Heaven, and I'm like 49.5% through, so for all intents and purposes I am halfway through the book, about halfway through the time that I gave myself to do it. And considering that when I have a couple other reading projects done here pretty shortly, like in the first week of April if not earlier, I'll be able to spend a couple weeks just solely focusing on this book, which will be exciting. I'll be able to get a lot done. But with that being said, like I mentioned up top, I did read chapters 23 through 28 this week. Just a couple of little portions of plot lines happening in this one, not like a whole bunch of jumping back and forth. There's a little bit of material. I enjoyed everything that I read this week, as little as it was. But for the most part, it was just chapters 23 through 25 that were a little bit of POV of Egwene's, with a little bit of Elaine mixed in there, not her POV, but her character. And then there's chapter 26 through 28, which continue on the sort of tangential plot line for the book, which is that of Swan Sanche, Min, and Leanne, and those characters over there. That's the other plot line that happened a little bit this week. So let me just start off by covering chapters 23 through 25 with some pretty big revelations and important changes that I think are going to be big for the continuation of this book specifically. Chapter 23 was rather limited, mostly just using Egwene as an outside perspective, viewing a little bit of Rand's political machinations with the Aiel. There's a little bit of culture clash between Aviendha and Egwene that was interesting and fun to read in this chapter, but 23 was mostly limited to that kind of stuff. These characters continuing to not understand each other in spite of trying to understand each other, but the chapter was mostly limited. The real kicker was chapters 24 through 25, where Egwene enters Tel'aran'rhiod to meet who she thinks she's meeting Egwene, Egwene thinks she's meeting Nynaeve, but she actually meets Elaine in Tel'aran'rhiod with, one of the wise ones as per normal. In chapter 24, she actually, sort of accidentally enters Tel'aran'rhiod before she's technically supposed to. And as such, she actually catches Elaine speaking with, and I'm going to say the name wrong again, I'm sorry, but Berget? I'm just going to say Berget. Something like that character's name. I'm going to say it that way consistently, I think, in order to keep my mind straight. If I'm having to really focus on saying a character's name every single time I'm saying their name, it's just going to become alphabet soup in my mind. So Egwene sees Berget in Tel'aran'rhiod with Elaine, so that's not good, because in last week's diary we discussed how Nynaeve was talking with Berget during her meeting before Egwene showed up, revealing that Berget's not really supposed to show herself to people. People aren't supposed to know that where she resides for the moment until she is called for the very last battle is Tel'aran'rhiod. So the fact that she is talking to these people and giving them information is technically a bad thing, I guess. And so Egwene seeing this is actually, pretty big of a deal. Can't bode well for who else might be able to see similar stuff, as we're able to learn in the next chapter. But, in chapter 24 at the very end, in the meeting, Egwene's basically able to hint to Elaine, like, hey, I want to meet you at the White Tower in Tel'aran'rhiod. Let's go there after this meeting. But she's able to do it subtly enough that the wise ones don't catch on, or maybe they have caught on and they just haven't revealed anything yet. But knowing the wise ones at this point, I'm not sure if that's really, the case. But either way, that's what happens in chapter 25. They go there and they meet in the White Tower after the main meeting in Tel'aran'rhiod is over. So Egwene and Elaine now are in the tower in Tel'aran'rhiod so that Egwene can ask about Berget. And Elaine refuses to elaborate because really part of the promise of speaking with each other was that Elaine and Nynaeve aren't supposed to reveal this, and not supposed to reveal who it is. Pretty much clearly, like, they're not supposed to, even though Egwene was able to weed out who it was just by reasoning and logic. Like, oh, like, there are these things about her character, like a silver bow, was that the thing, something about a bow that was like, okay, I very clearly know who this is. Either way, Elaine still refuses to elaborate, but it turns out to be a very wise decision to not elaborate, as we'll see a tiny bit later. But right after this meeting, Egwene goes off and searches the Amerlin's office again alone, after, speaking with Elaine, in order to try to weed out a little bit more of the information that she and Nynaeve found a little bit of, but didn't fully get the first time that they were talking here in the tower earlier in their book. I forget around which portion, but a little bit earlier when they were searching the Amerlin's office. Then, while Egwene is searching in the Amerlin's office, she does actually start to drift a little bit into regular dreams while still in Tel'aran'rhiod, basically nearly getting trapped there, and like, she gets really worried about this, and she should be, but she actually doesn't know why. It is revealed in a POV right after this that Moghedien, straight from her POV actually, that she overheard Egwene speaking with Elaine. So obviously, like, the fact that Birgit meets with people is dangerous because Moghedien could be watching and could notice, but it's not like it matters anyway, because now Moghedien knows that Birgit is associated with these two characters, and thus, also that Elaine is associated with Nynaeve, who Moghedien is trying to find. So there's like pretty big information that Moghedien just now suddenly knows, and that's very disconcerting and also dangerous, and like kind of a problem, honestly. It's bad. So Moghedien tries to trap Elaine in Tel'aran'rhiod in this dream, in this, weaving of hers, because like that's in her best interest, quite frankly. And Egwene only barely manages to escape, presumably because she is like much more powerful in the one power. Maybe it didn't have anything to do with the power, but like she was able to just barely escape and not get trapped in the dream. But yeah, because Moghedien knows some of these things, like that's huge bombshells that's gonna have ginormous repercussions later in the story, surely. But now we're going to move into chapters 26 through 28, which are, like I said, the Min, Logain, these character POVs, this storyline. We come back to it with a Min POV where she is seeing a lot of viewings in this chapter, especially chapter 26, but one of them being of Logain, repeatedly getting that, the viewing of Logain's glory to come. She doesn't know what the glory is, but she knows that Logain is going to live and be a glorious figure or do something good at some point in the future. So even though Logain seems to have like lost his will to live in such that gentling, I think that's the term for males, after he was gentled, being cut off from the one power makes people lose the will to live eventually, and it seems like Logain's going through that process now. But Min is still repeatedly seeing this viewing over his head, like seeing that he's going to be something important. So like he's not just going to die on us. At least she's 100. She's like 99 or even 100% certain she'd be willing to bet that he's not going to die on them. But even such, it's interesting that Logain has suddenly started to lose the will to live at this point. But it is also in this chapter because it is titled Salidara, however you want to pronounce it, whatever. The group approaches and enters Salidar, the village that was, I guess I didn't fully hook onto this, in previous mentions of the town name, but I guess it was a place that was destroyed at one point. So like it's a, very small, like not really settled village anymore, at least not massively settled. So for this group to be searching it out actually makes them pretty easy to find, as we'll see in I guess the next chapter, I suppose, but the next couple chapters. Either way, they enter Salidar in chapter 26, and this is where a lot of Aes Sedai have been gathering in secret following Swan's deposing. Swan and Leanne are forced to prove their identities to this group of Aes Sedai here, and because there's a lot of high-ranking ones at this point. after being stilled, like they look different. They might not sound a whole lot different, but they definitely look different. So they have to like prove substantially to the other Aes Sedai that like, yeah, we are who we say we are, and we can still be useful. We still want to be useful, even if we aren't Aes Sedai anymore. There was a lot of like underlying thematic material that I liked thinking about, just kind of the way that the subtle lack of desire that Aes Sedai have to talk about stilling. And of course, it's not necessarily subtle in that Jordan writes it out multiple times. Like he says explicitly on page, like, Aes Sedai don't really like talking about this thing. They don't like acknowledging what it would be like to be stilled, because it's like something that they don't even want to imagine it. So why would they consider it as a possibility? But yeah, Swan and Leanne have been stilled, and they are here now, and they want to help a little bit in whatever way that they see fit, and whether this is only beneficial for Swan and Leanne, or if it's actually beneficial for everybody, like nobody's really for sure at this point. Like we can presume that they're fully well intentioned, but there might be some other underlying stuff going on with this as well. But yeah, besides this, the main thing of note that I got from chapter 26 was just all of Min's viewings, because she had a lot of viewings of Logain specifically, but she was also having a lot of viewings of several of the Aes Sedai and some of the other characters in the chapter, and I wonder, you know, how far this is going to go, what kind of things are going to be important immediately, or what stuff is like foreshadowing for a long while in the future. Who knows? I don't remember all the characters that had specific viewings, and I don't think Min even recognized or knew the names of all the people that she saw viewings for, but it is interesting material nonetheless. Chapter 27 and 28, however, both really, really, really good chapters. These were yet another one of those moments of like, this is what I love about the series, this is what I want more of. This was really good. It was straight politicking brilliance, was chapter 27, between discussions of deposing Elaine, or not Elaine, of deposing Elaida, that's the right name, deposing Elaida, the new Amyrlin seat, determining who would be a good fit to be the new Amyrlin seat to replace Elaida, because it seems like most of the Aes Sedai of most of the Ajas that aren't red aren't really happy with Elaida's, you know, rising to the seat. And even in, you know, Elaida's POVs from earlier, it seemed like not everybody was like fully respecting her position, like kind of using it as a means to an end to do their own thing. So like there's a lot of like political underlying madness going on with this, not just this plot line, but like everything associated with it as well, that I find interesting. There was also, you know, talks about trying to locate Rand in the Waste, because, well, obviously, well, maybe Swan actively knows that Rand is in the Waste. I don't remember for sure, but I'm pretty sure she knows because of Moraine and because of communications back when Rand actually left Tyr in the Shadow Rising. So like there's the suggestion that like Swan knows where he's at, or she's at least making the suggestion that people should look where he's approximately going to be at, so that there's a group of people to meet him, and basically to try to keep him out of Elaida's hands, because if Elaida gets hands of him, then, you know, the justifications that they're going to try to use to depose Elaida are not going to go well with basically anybody, because Elaida will have the real dragon, and one of the real dragon reborn, and one of the things they were going to say was like, well, Logain is a false dragon that was gentled, who may have been brought up by Elaida specifically, like by the Red Aja, as a sort of distraction, or as a means of, you know, pushing forward their agenda, we'll say. So there was a lot of really exciting stuff. Not really exciting stuff, actually. It was mostly just the politicking, and I found that to be really enjoyable to read. It was really cool stuff. And then the chapter ends with Gareth Brine, the war captain from what's the place, Andor, who's been following the group this whole time, approaching Saladar. So that's exciting. Like I said, Swan was, you know, kind of inquiring in villages along the way to find out where Saladar actually is at, and because of this, Gareth Brine is able to follow pretty easy because the people tell him, and this is told in chapter 28, which I'm pretty sure is just a straight up Gareth Brine POV, if I'm not mistaken, for the first part of it. I just really liked it. Brine continues to be an amazing character. I really like him really cool personality, like just straightforward, very likable. There's nothing that I really have to complain about his character. He's really great. I love having him on the page, even for the brief moments that he is on the page. And really, it was more politicking stuff. He's able to make a conditional deal with the Aes Sedai, as crazy of, a decision as that is for him to do. He's able to make a conditional deal with the Aes Sedai, firm yet fair, and also just, really good about participating, because they wanted to basically force him or recruit him to be like a war general, like to make military style plots with the Aes Sedai for deposing Elaida and whatever other means that they need to use him for, especially since he doesn't really serve the greatest purpose in Andor right now after what's his bucket, Gabriel had Morghese just exile him essentially from Camelin. So really cool stuff with this character. Great stuff in this chapter. Like, this is what I love about Wheel of Time. It was really great. And then also at the very end of the chapter, Min reveals to Swan through more viewings that Swan will die unless she stays close to Brine. So the fact that the Aes Sedai basically indenture Swan, and I guess Leanne, maybe even Min as well, to Gareth Brine's, servitude. That was, another interesting decision. So I guess these characters are going to be together, especially since, like I said, Min tells Swan that if she does not stay by Brine's side, or they get separated for too long, like, Swan is probably going to die for whatever reason that is. So that's ominous. We'll kind of see what happens there. But that was all that I read over the last week. I rambled on a little bit longer than I thought I was going to about just these 6 chapters. It was a lot of really good stuff, but thank you for bearing with me for this. I'll be back next week, and I think about starting a new month, basically, continuing on with the book. I think this weekend I'm going to read about a normal amount compared to the first 3 diaries, closer to 100-ish pages, closer to 5 hours or so of reading, rather than like just 3. I hope to be able to do that this weekend, and then I think for the next couple weeks after that, I'll be able to read a lot more of it, and maybe even get through and finish a week early. I'm hoping to finish a week early because of other video plans that I have going on, so we'll see what happens. But thank you for watching this video. I'll be back next week with another one for however much further I get through. I'm about halfway through, still really liking it. I think the next video will have probably a lot of discussion about the start of the circus plot, so that's going to be rather entertaining. I'll see you there if you care to join me.